good to see Susan. Joining us now is Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator, it's good to see you this afternoon. Nothing from the White House yet, but the House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters says she is going to hold hearings on all of this. There's rare bipartisan agreement over the idea of holding hearings. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the same page as this. Where do you come down on this idea of this David versus Goliath issue that we see here, and whether or not there should be hearings? Does this belong in Congress?
John, I do believe we'll need to have hearings, in particular have hearings on Robinhood and some other outlets shutting down trading for small solo investors yesterday into these stocks, while major institutional investors could continue to trade. These solo investors have really done nothing to some of these major institutional investors that they don't do to each other all the time by a so-called short squeeze of buying stocks that the institutional investors were short on. No surprise, no real news there. But the trades have to be conducted on an equal and fair basis. And solo investors who are making money, sometimes a lot of money, at the expense of these institutional investors shouldn't be shut down their market, shut down their trades. More fundamentally, we want to make sure that our stock markets reflect the underlying market realities, that they're a way for companies with the good idea to go out and raise money to try to produce that good idea to serve the American people in the marketplace.
But Senator, those average everyday investors that we're talking about, they're being given the opportunity to use very sophisticated derivatives on these retail trading platforms. When you really look at it, which I did this morning because I wasn't completely familiar with it, and I do think that that becomes a problem when lawmakers say something's wrong here. You know, it gets a lot of attention because Main Street thinks, well, Wall Street must be rigged. And then you have lawmakers make big claims like this isn't a level playing field. And I would just put to you, how do you ensure that members of Congress who say there's going to be hearings on this, you know, Sherrod Brown was one of the first ones to come out and say that there's going to be hearings on this, we're going to dig into this. How do you ensure that Wall Street, that our beloved marketplace, our free markets, don't get overregulated by lawmakers that overreact and knee-jerk to situations like this?
Well, Sandra, I don't think we should overreact. We should get to the bottom of what happened over the last week. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a government response to what happened, but we do need to examine it, especially the closure of trading platforms for some of these solo investors this week. I don't want to jump to conclusions about the matter. I want to ensure that we get to the bottom of what happened and that we have a well-functioning, fair marketplace that is allowing anyone who wants to trade in stocks, and that is helping companies raise the money they need to grow and provide jobs and to provide goods and services in the marketplace. That's the point of hearing. It's not to jump to conclusions. It's not to condemn any one actor in the marketplace.
Senator, there's so many things we want to get to with you today, including President Biden and his executive orders. You say that despite Biden's calls for unity, he has, quote, no regard for hardworking blue-collar Americans and their jobs. He's been particularly prolific with executive orders, and you have signed on to a bill from Wyoming Senator Cynthia Lummis, which would require Congress to at least sign off on this ban on oil and gas drilling on federal lands. Has President Biden gone too far with the executive pen?
Yeah, John, he's gone way too far in some of these executive orders. Look, he preached unity last Wednesday from the inaugural platform, but why don't we go ask some of those 11,000 blue-collar workers on the Keystone Pipeline if they think it was unifying to cancel their jobs, or what they think about John Kerry telling them that they need to make better choices about their jobs in the future. And for that matter, Senator Lummis's bill that has addressing the ban on all new oil and gas exploration on federal lands. We don't have a lot of that in Arkansas, but you know what we do have? We have a lot of people that need to drive pickup trucks or tractors on their farm that need access to gasoline and to diesel. And I'd hate to see us hamstring ourselves when we've just achieved energy independence while also killing hundreds of thousands of jobs in the oil and gas production sector.
You know, but people are going to look at his use of the pen and say elections have consequences, right? He won the election, and Democrats gained control in the Senate. And I would ask you, perhaps not that did he go too far with his use of the pen, but has he lurched as far to the left with these executive orders and action as you may have predicted? Or do you believe the progressives in his party are pushing him further?
I think he has lurched very far to the left, Sandra. I mean, he said during the campaign he was not going to ban fracking. Now that's exactly what he's done on public lands. He said in the campaign he was going to enforce immigration laws. I predicted at the time that there would be a surge of migrants coming to our border if Joe Biden won. That's exactly what happened because of some of his immigration executive orders. I could go on and on about the leftward lurch. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't even further more liberal members of the Democratic Party are going to push him further, but it's gone pretty far right now. I think anybody who works in the Keystone Pipeline would tell you that.
Yeah, another big topic, Senator, is the COVID relief bill, this $1.9 trillion package. Democrats are now suggesting that they may use, the president came out moments ago. First of all, let's go to the president. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Mr. President, why are you going to Walter Reed?
Going out to visit some of the soldiers and sailors that are been wounded and look at the vaccination procedure. I've been at Walter Reed a lot. I spent almost 6 months there myself as a patient. And in addition to that, as vice president, every single Christmas, we spent all of Christmas Day at Walter Reed. These kids are amazing. And thank God there's not as many people to visit. All the people I'm seeing today who are being treated, 4 of them amputees, are people who, in fact, are retired, but they're real heroes. And then we're going to go see the vaccination distribution. So, I spent a lot of time at Walter Reed. They're great Americans. They're great people. Nice to see you all.
Any progress on your COVID bill?
I'm sorry?
Do you support passing COVID relief through budget reconciliation?
I support passing COVID relief with support from Republicans if we can get it, but the COVID relief has to pass. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Thank you.
There you go, the first edition of Chopper Talk for President Biden, and that brings us back to Senator Cotton. You heard what the president said. He'd like to pass COVID relief with Republicans, but is prepared to do it without. There's talk among Democrats that they'll do this through the reconciliation process, which would require just a simple majority. And I'm wondering what happened to the bipartisan cooperation that there was between Republicans and Democrats late last year to get the last COVID relief bill done. That seems to have evaporated pretty quickly.
John, this is another disappointing development of Joe Biden after preaching unity last week, immediately empowering Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to go it along. As you said, we passed multiple bills last year, starting in March with the CARES Act, finishing up in late December, that spent trillions of dollars to give needed relief to the American people and fund the record development of so many vaccines, help schools stay open or get back open as the case may be. We're happy to work together on a bipartisan bill that would actually address those needs, that would make sure that vaccines are getting distributed, that schools are staying open. What we don't want to see is a trillion-dollar bill, multi-trillion-dollar bill that is really just going to fund a lot of long-standing Democratic priorities, not things that are going to help us get over the pandemic or deal with the economic consequences of it. I hope the Democrats will try to cooperate with us so we can pass a good bill.
Senator Cotton, I want to ask you about you writing about the National Guard. Our National Guard's capital mission's complete. It's time to send our troops home. What is happening here? Give our viewers an update on where things stand with those troops at the Capitol and what you're calling for.
Well, we still have the anti-riot fencing with razor wire around the Capitol, several thousand troops there. I'm not aware of any specific credible threat, Sandra, that requires that. Now, if the threat reporting does require it, as it did in the days leading up to January 6th, we should have it. That was the big failing on January 6th, was not being prepared for that. If there are major events in the future, like if Joe Biden addresses a joint session of Congress or a foreign leader does, we need to be prepared for that. But the answer is temporary obstacles and barriers and personnel surges. The answer is not to turn the Capitol, the people's house, into a fortress or a permanent armed camp. The American people, once we get back to normal and the pandemic is behind us, should be able to come visit their elected representatives.
Another topic, if we could, to test you on here, Senator, and that is a change at the National Security Council. Jake Sullivan has drawn down the Office of Middle East Affairs and has beefed up the Office of Asian Affairs with a real pivot toward China. You are a hawk when it comes to China. Are you appreciative of the changes that they have made across the street from you there at the NSC regarding the pivot to China?
So, John, I think it reflects the reality of our strategic circumstances. China is our #1 competitor in the world. They're an economic competitor. They're a military competitor. They're a diplomatic and political competitor. And I think it just reflects that reality that we need to focus in the Congress. We need to focus in the executive branch on competing with and beating China in this strategic competition.
Because there was some question as to whether or not Joe Biden fully appreciated the threat coming from China. He famously said, China's going to eat our lunch. Come on, man.
So they've taken some steps I approve, for instance, inviting Taiwan's representative to the inauguration. Other steps, like their nominees not committing to keep Huawei on the denied entity blacklist, I disapprove. So I think the jury is still out on this.
Senator, if I could finally get you to react to John Kerry this week talking about climate change posing one of our biggest threats to national security. What did you think when you heard that?
Well, if John Kerry really thought that, I think he'd trade down his private jet and all of his yachts and his multi-million-dollar mansions that he got spread all around the country. So climate change may be an existential threat for Keystone Pipeline workers, but I don't think it is for Mr. Kerry.
Senator Cotton, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you.